I'm a Manchester lad, and me and my mum and dad and my brothers were all season ticket holders on the Kippax. My dream was always to play for City in the derby against United and in a Wembley final. I just didn't expect to do both in the same weekend. This week we welcome lifelong Blue of 50 years, Phil Gatenby. Phil, who was at the very forefront of City's fanzine movement in the late 80s, went on to write the book Teenage Kicks, a brilliant tribute to the talented 1986 FA Youth Cup winning side, featuring the likes of David White, Ian Brightwell and Paul Lake. Phil Gatenby, welcome to Maybe in Another Generation. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, one question that I always love to ask is, how and why did you become a Manchester City fan?
My dad, born and bred simply, Altrincham grammar boy, no interest in football. He raised three sons. He had absolutely no interest in sport, any sport. My mum, Moss side, born and bred until they were shipped off to Bench Hill. If you remember the old City Chippy at Main Road, there was that sort of wasteland across the road that became sort of a school field. My mum's house was on that wasteland.
Oh, right, wow.
Yeah, so my granddad, Big Blue and everything. But then by the time I was born, my parents would move to Warrington. And then my dad got a job transfer and we ended up in Coventry. And I must have been 6, and we went back. We always went back to see the grandparents and stuff. And we went to see a cousin, my mum's cousin in Timperley. And they had 3 kids. And the youngest, who I actually spoke with his father last night, because I wanted to get my facts right on here. He's 4 years older than me. He got me in the corner of this room and basically told me I had to support Man City or he'd beat me up. And I was 6. I didn't even really know much about football, but I ended up coming back and I was a mad City fan from that day onwards. And I know I was 6 because the first game I watched on TV was the '69 Cup final. Right. And we went round to a friend of my parents' house because they had a colour TV and we watched it on there. So I know I was 6 and I was bullied into being a City fan. And I'm glad I was. So brilliant. Yeah.
I can imagine watching that '69 Cup final on colour, with the red and black.
Yes,
red and black. The FA Cup was absolutely ginormous back in the day, wasn't it?
Yes,
it was the biggest of deals.
Yeah.
So that was when you first not fell in love, because you were told to fall in love with them. When did you start going regularly, as in home games, and then develop into home and away Blue, which you went on to be?
Yeah, well, the first game I went to, I've got the programme here. So I was 10 and my dad took me and my second, the middle brother, at Highfield Road. It was a night match. We lost 2-1. And
so that's
then
73.
After that...
Is that 73?
Yes,
is it?
73, wow. Yeah. And then the first home game was December 74. And we went up for Christmas. And again, it was my mum's auntie lived on, if you go down Claremont Road, turning onto Kippax Street, obviously to go to the terrace. The second house on the right, on going up Claremont Road, was my mum's auntie Esther's house. So we turned up there for Christmas, and we're like, City are at home, So we just had this short walk. I was 11 then, just leaving primary school, and I sat on that rail in the middle of the Kippax where all the kids sat.
Yeah.
So then.
Who was that against, by the way, that home game?
Wolves 0-0. 0-0. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Now, after that, my trips then was my Christmas present and birthday present was a train trip to actually Stockport. And my mum's sister, who lived in Timperley, she'd pick me up at Edgeley. And then we'd go to the game. And so, but when it came to games going regularly, so I was 16, left school. And my good friend Lawrence Murphy in Coventry put an advert in the Coventry Evening Telegraph saying, Manchester City fans, there's a supporters club, branch going. Call this number for details. And it was the Leicester and Rugby supporters club, and we had our own bus. It was Citizens Travel was written on the back, and it'd start at Leicester, pick up at Rugby, and then pick up at the pub right next to the M6. And that was it. I was home and away from the age of 16. Fantastic. As soon as I left school. got my first season ticket the following season. So that was the 81, the cup final year, and that was £17 in the Kippax for a season ticket.
Brilliant. And so you were just travelling up for every home game and then going to away games.
And we went home and away. The bus went every game. There were great days on that bus.
Brilliant. So is it fair to say home and away pretty much from 80-81 onwards?
Yes, yeah.
Brilliant. Amazing.
Yeah, the 84-85 season, I went to every home and away game. I did every home reserve game except one because the first team were playing at Birmingham that night, and every home reserve youth team game. And we played Crewe and Chester over a weekend pre-season. It was 74 games in total, and I was unemployed.
I won't ask how you got in. I won't ask how you got in. That is
season ticket.
That is some effort.
Yeah.
That is some effort.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spoke to some guests on this podcast who've been to a lot of games. Some people, I'm speaking to someone who's going to do the treble season who went to 63 games in that season.
Wow.
To do 74 is just something special, especially when, let's face it, we were shit. So fair play to you.
Well, the thing is with the season ticket, the reserve games were free.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah.
Right. Is that Central League?
Yes.
Is that Central League? Was that something? Right. Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good stuff. So the season that you've chosen, it's two huge occasions within it, really. But the season you've chosen is not an obvious choice. So many of our guests have chosen seasons that you wouldn't immediately jump to. And despite our huge success in recent years, you're taking us back to 40 years to the 85-86 season. Why this one?
Well, City won the FA Youth Cup that season for the first time, and it became an obsession of mine. So much so that it was 13 years ago now, I ended up writing with Andrew Walden this book here, Teenage Kicks, which is all about not just how they won the cup, but how they as a group came together. What happened the year before, but then also what happened to them afterwards, because obviously 7 of them went on to play for the first team. But then what happened to the other 7? Because they all had good careers either in football or elsewhere, and some of them still are, and it followed them until that point.
Yeah, and we'll come to that towards the end of it in terms of the legacy of this season, because on the surface you think 85-86, well, we didn't get promoted, we didn't get relegated, which back then is quite unusual for City because we're always doing something.
Yeah.
You think, what actually happened? But actually there's a huge legacy to this season because you could argue a lot of those players saved us in the end financially.
It did.
In the end. But we will come to that, no spoilers. So take us back to the start of that season or the summer of that season. How do we find City? How do we find the team, the club, and the mood amongst yourself and the rest of the fan base?
Yeah, I mean, we were all excited because we'd got promoted in the famous 5-1 against Charlton, and in the summer we signed 3 players. Mark Lillis, who instantly became a fan favourite. I remember him because he always kept saying he was a City fan. We had Nigel Johnson from Rotherham, who had a rough time. He didn't play. He was always injured. Yeah. And then there was Sammy McIlroy, which raised a few eyebrows for his obvious United connections. But then the first game of the season was Coventry away, and Sammy McIlroy scored. It was a 1-1 draw at Highfield Road. And we all thought, this is great. Sammy McIlroy's going to, because we did need experience. We did need experienced players to get us through what was going to be a tough first year back. Unfortunately for Sammy, it didn't quite work out. And he actually had, in the following summer, 86 in the World Cup in Mexico. He was captain of Northern Ireland in those finals as a City reserve player, which was just totally bizarre. But didn't quite work out for him.
Yeah, and I suppose because as you'll have heard, we've covered that Charlton promotion season with the wonderful Gary James and the 83-84 with Simon Curtis, and one thing that comes throughout all of them is our precarious financial situation. And really, I'm looking at those 3 signings. I'm thinking, well, you've just been promoted. We're hardly going for it, are we? Clearly, we're still in the financial mire.
Very much so, and because the youth team, they hadn't come through yet. I mean, obviously we had Mick McCarthy, but then there was Jim Tolney, we had Jim Melrose, Neil McNabb, who actually was an excellent
Went on to be
buy,
brilliant for
30,000.
us.
Yeah. And because we had Alex Williams started the season in goal. We lost to United early on in the season, 3-0 at home. That was his last appearance for City in the first team. And Eric Nixon came in. Again, no experience, just reserve games. So we were struggling, and we did struggle in those early few games. You know, we I think we won 2 out of the first 10. So it was a struggle.
Yeah, it wasn't good at all. And at this point, there was no sign. You know, look through some of the early lineups. There's no sign of the youth team coming through really at all at the start of that season, is there? There's no hint to listen. We've got no money. Can't afford to buy anybody, so we'll just throw the kids in. We were just desperately hanging on to some really old players, weren't we?
Yeah. I mean, Darren Beckford was knocking on the door, because Darren was a year older than the youth team that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
And he was very, very prolific. Paul Molden was the first to make an appearance, but that was in the full Members Cup.
Yeah.
And then Steve Redmond made his debut in the February, because either Mick McCarthy was injured or Kenny Clements was injured, and Steve Redmond played, I think it was like the last 14, 15 games, including a Wembley appearance, which again I'm getting ahead of myself.
We will come to, because we didn't only have the league campaign, we didn't only have the Milk Cup as it was then, and the FA Cup. There's another trophy. Tell us a little bit around what it was and how the hell we ended up in it.
Well, it was the full Members Cup. So, the aftermath of the Heysel disaster was that English clubs were banned from Europe. So the FA came up with, I think it was the Super Screen Cup?
That's right. Yeah.
It was some cup that was designed for those clubs that would have qualified for Europe in all 3 competitions, to have some sort of financial windfall for not being in Europe. And as a result of that, the other clubs thought, well, why can't we have some sort of competition? So it was first and second division clubs had the full, what we call the full Monty Cup.
And
that's
the foolish members.
The third and fourth division had, I think, was the Freight Rover Trophy, and
right,
which still goes today in another name. So that was that competition, and it was split into 2, the North and the South. And then in the North, there was 4 groups of 3 teams. So you played 2 games, 1 home and 1 away, and the winner of each group went through to either the Northern semi-final or the Southern semi-final.
Yeah.
And we had Leeds at home, which we won 6-1. Gordon Davis got a hat-trick, and we played Sheffield United away and won 2-1. So the Leeds at home game, 4,029. I was there. I went to every single full Members Cup game. The Sheffield United away game, 3,420.
Horrendous.
So we won them both. We topped the group, and that meant we played Sunderland in the Northern semi-final.
So that's not the semi-final. That's just the Northern semi-final.
It's the Northern semi-final.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So no goals after 90 minutes, no goals after 120 minutes. This Paul Molden came on in extra time, and we won 4-3 on penalties in front of 6,642.
Yeah.
So now we've qualified for a double-legged Northern final against Hull City.
Well, hold that thought, because we're going to come back to the 4 members final, because
that's the Northern final.
That's the Northern. Jeez, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we will come back to that, because going back to the start of that season, you're right. We didn't have a good start at all. I mean, we really struggled. I think, as you say, I think it was actually only 2 wins in the first 16 league games. Are you thinking at this point, yeah, it's not looking good, this? I can see another relegation on the horizon.
We knew it'd be a struggle, but we always believed. I mean, there was a lot of draws in those games. Do you remember the Spurs game? What was unusual about beating Spurs at home?
Yes. Well, the very fact we beat Spurs at home was unusual, but we were in our away kit, and that was the first time. And we went on to do it again in the early 90s, of course. But we were in our red and black kit, weren't we?
So we started off in the sky blue.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very sunny day, and it was on the Kippax. And I remember saying at the time, because Spurs white was like had a hint of blue in it. There wasn't a lot.
They had the Hummel, and it had like a fadedy blue bit, yeah.
there wasn't a lot of difference between the two. And I remember very early on in the game, the linesman flagged us offside, and I was level, and no way was the City player offside. And I said to somebody, the linesman can't tell the difference between these two shirts. And I think it was like 3 or 4 minutes later, the referee blows the whistle, gathers the Spurs players around, and he's talking with the Spurs players, and somebody goes running off. The whole Kipax is shouting what is going on. And the next thing is the City players are leaving the field. And again, the Kipax is going crazy with what is going on. And then City come out with the red and black kit on. And we beat them 2-1. And that was repeated in 1990.
Yeah, because I'm surprised, because didn't we, the second game where we wore our away kit, Spurs were in yellow anyway. Bright yellow. Yeah. So I'm surprised there was even a clash, but maybe it was because of the fog. But yeah, so we won that game because I think we'd been at West Brom and won away, and we weren't a team that won many away games. Then we got that other victory, and then it started on the slide. And unfortunately, one of those results was a right good thumping against United. And I remember that clearly because it was like watching day versus night. It was, and I know United had spent a lot of money. They had some really good players, but they absolutely battered us and we looked clueless. I think that was the season, Phil, wasn't it, where they won the first sort of 12 games. They were like top of the league, and then they finished 4th in a 2-horse race.
Yeah.
Is that right?
They did. Ron Atkinson was the manager. I think it was his last season. 36 points out of 36 or something, and then didn't pull it off in the end.
Completely fell apart because he had as strong as you had. Everton were champions; they were going for it. Liverpool, who ended up winning the double. West Ham had a brilliant side with Cottee and McAvenny around that time, and it's really sad to see that United finished 4th, which was really upsetting. So we've started badly. We've not really signed anyone. We've signed a City fan in Mark Lillis. The other two injured, doesn't go so well. Still no sign of the youth team. But actually, the youth team are busy starting to create some success for themselves. Tell me a little bit about that season and that team and the makeup of it, and when you started to realise actually this lot are special.
Well, it was the season before, and actually speaking to a lot of the players, they all maintained that the season before they were a better team. And the season before, we started off, we beat Preston 6-0 at home. We then went to Billingham and won 10-1 away. Darren Beckford got a hat-trick in both. And then we beat Nottingham Forest 8-0. I remember it was 4-0
They had a
at
good
half
side,
time.
didn't they? Didn't they have a good
They did.
Wouldn't they have had like Nigel Clough and
I think Franz Carr. But, we beat Forest 8-0. And I remember Clough came down and sat in the dugout at half time. At the end of the game, he was shell-shocked. Absolutely shell-shocked. Then we went to Newcastle in the quarter-final. And again, when I was researching the book, I wrote to all the players with questions and whatever. I never told anybody else the answers of what anybody else had said. All of the players said the same thing about this Newcastle game. It shouldn't have gone ahead. It was an ice rink. And it just absolutely should not have gone ahead. And they all said it, so it's not like they're all being bitter or they're all spoken to each other. They all said the same thing. And we lost 2-1. David White in particular said, if we played them on a piece of grass, we'd have thrashed them. Newcastle went on to win the cup.
Would they have had Gaza that year?
Yes.
Right.
He scored against us.
Right, okay.
Now, there were 4 players from that team that then were not eligible. The following team, which was Darren Beckford, John Beresford, who went to have a great
Newcastle.
career, Earl Barrett.
Fantastic. And great centre-half for Oldham.
Yeah. So then introduced to this team now this year was Ian Brightwell, Paul Lake, Steve Mills, and Andy Hinchcliffe had been substitute in all those games the year before. So we were still strongly fancied. And prior to the Youth Cup, we played a Lancashire Youth Cup game against Oldham, and we won 12-0 away with Paul Lake scoring a hat-trick. But then it came to the FA Youth Cup, and we beat Tranmere away 7-1. That was the first round. And then Blackburn were beaten 7-1 as well. That's where to the third round, and it was Blackpool away. I know a very, very snowy pitch. And a lot of the players were panicking again, thinking we're going to, come a cropper like we did in Newcastle. We actually won 1-0, although David White missed a last-minute penalty. He never took a penalty after that. Now, Ian Brightwell in the book, he says that Sam Ellis was then the Blackpool manager, and when Sam Ellis was City's assistant, Ian Brightwell had a chat with him about that game, and Sam Ellis said we were desperate to play that game. He said there was no way that game was not going to be on, because it's the only chance we had of beating City. Then Leicester came to Main Road, and we beat them 4-1. The next round was the quarter-final, and this was Fulham away. And this was new territory because the youth team, they only played sort of the north of the Midlands and the northern teams. So they'd never gone to London before. It should have been played a midweek game, but it was rained off. So they actually played it on a Saturday, and it was a noon kickoff. And City played at Stamford Bridge at 3 o'clock. And I know the supporters club put a coach on that they left early and went to Craven Cottage. Right. And then went to Stamford Bridge, and we won 3-0 at Fulham, and that set up a double-legged semi-final against Arsenal,
which we will come to in a bit. Because at this stage, you've clearly been to a lot of youth team games. For you, who were the standouts at that stage? Like who did you think, wow? And even to a point, these could be ready for the first team, given how poor the first team are. Who stood out for you?
I mean, clearly Paul Maldon. Because he was scoring all the time. I mean, for his size, a very diminutive player. I mean, we all know about his Bolton Lads Club days and all that.
289 goals in a season or something like that.
He was just very, very prolific. But it wasn't just the scoring. He was just, just a great all-around player. Steve Redmond, you could tell at the back was solid, as was Andy Inchcliffe and Steve Mills, both the fullbacks. Ian Brightwell, I mean, again, once we got to understand his family, his genealogy, you could understand where his energy levels came from. The one player who didn't impress me was Paul Lake. I didn't get him.
Was he?
I hope you're not watching this, Paul.
Am I right in thinking that he played centre forward in some of our games?
He was centre forward.
Right.
He was centre forward.
So that figures then.
I think, in my head, looking back, because Darren Beckford was a Mark Haitley type centre forward, tall. I think my image of Paul in that season in the youth team was like, he's not a centre forward, and he was just sort of this like gangly legged person up front. The other thing as well is that he was 16, just turning 17 as well. So he was like one of the younger ones in the team as well. Okay. So I think looking back, I was a bit unfair. To judge him on that, but at the time I just didn't get it. The following season, by now obviously one of the older in this squad, he was an amazing player. He was, I don't know what it was, but I was just like, I mean, it only took me a year to realise I'd made a mistake. Yeah, and he stood out that year. He stood out as a fantastic player,
and that's when I couldn't
wait to see him get in the first team.
Yeah, and he got his break. I think he got his break the following season, didn't he? We talk about who would be your best City 11 pre-takeover. He's in it, and he clearly got better the further back he went because he was brilliant in midfield, and he could play on the right or the left as well. I mean, I think he played on the left in the 5-1. I think he certainly played in midfield anyway. And then when he went to centre half, when Howard Kendall made him captain centre half, he was just absolutely imperious. I mean, he without over fantasizing about a player, I think he could have gone on to be England and an international world class. He was that good with the ball, wasn't he?
And you have to ask, would we have been able to hold on to him?
Well, probably not,
for that long, because
we'll talk about it in a bit. Probably not, because all of that, you had in that season that we were in the second division, the season before we got promoted when we had Paul Stewart. You had Souness and Dalglish, and all these managers were there every week looking at Brightwell, looking at Redmond, looking at Stewart, and Stewart obviously eventually went. But there was never a week when past where you heard that one of our players was going to go to Rangers. Do you know what I mean? So, he probably would have been sold, especially by our honourable chairman at the time, looking to make a decent book. Although he didn't clearly rate him that much, given how he was treated later on. But that is a different podcast. So the first team, we're not doing very well in the league. And actually, it amazes me where we finished in the table that season, because when I look along that list of results, I think lost, draw. And then you look at the final league table, you think, I don't know what's happened there. But in the full members cup, we're doing all right, and the crowds are getting a little bit bigger. In terms of you at this point, you go into every single game. And I've done this with previous guests because not everybody will be of the same vintage as you and I. Can you just tell us a little bit about what it was like going to, particularly away games? We know Main Road could be a bit of a death trap for away fans anyway, down those little rat runs and trying to get away from the ground. What was football like back in the day in terms of going and attending?
Yeah, I mean, I would say by this season, the majority of away games I was on the special,
Right, okay.
which made it a lot easier, because you were pretty much escorted from the station into the ground. I mean, the London games were always dodgy. We had to go. It was on the special ones to Euston. We got off at Euston, and then we went to Arsenal. And coming back, we were all escorted to the station. We got on the underground. Somebody pulled the cord. The train crept into King's Cross, and we all had to walk from King's Cross to Euston. And it was just it was like we were just being picked off from across the road, gangs just walking on and then just mingling in with us, and then it was just kicking off all over the place. You had to have your wits around you. You didn't wear colours. It's funny now because I watch Ian Cheeseman's vlogs every week, and we'll start off, and he's like, say for example, Brighton, and he's on the Brighton front outside a pub, and everyone's just sat there having a nice drink, full colours, everything, and you're just thinking, this,
you get battered if you did that at Millwall away, Chelsea away. You know what I mean, on the King's Road,
Yeah, and even like fans coming out of Anfield, whatever, with colours on. You're just thinking, wow,
not a chance.
I did it once. I did it once at Anfield. I worked. This is when I was in Coventry. We played at Anfield, and there was a Liverpool fan there. I borrowed a Liverpool scarf off him, and when we got off the bus, I put the scarf on until we got to the turnstile, took it off, and I walked back with it on. And I'm not ashamed to say I did that because previous years you were chased, you were kicked, there was threats and whatever.
Stanley Park, not a chance. I'd do anything not to get a good hide in there. So, and that's what we're hearing is that it was. Sometimes you'd love to go back and love to experience the atmosphere in the kit packs. I'd love to go back to the original kit packs, but actually, there's a lot of the past football generation that's best left in the past, isn't there?
Yeah, funny enough, the Newcastle game when we lost 5-0 in the second division, I went on the bus.
Yeah,
and I mean that's the only year I went. I said I'd never go back. I never ever went back to St James's Park, and I was just terrified. There was it was all ticket, and yet there was Geordies in the away end kicking off. We lost 5-0. I'd hate to think what they'd have done if we'd have drawn. And I think that was the other thing as well, is that the police in those days, we were all treated like hooligans. And the West Midlands police in particular were just awful. We were all tied with the same brush. They just had carte blanches. If I had a video camera like we do now on our phones and we record the antics that the police got up to, and I know there were a lot of hooligans. They had to deal with them, but they just dealt with all of us in the same way. And some of the scenes that went on with the police was just outrageous, so that they just wouldn't get away with today.
No, I think we all just got put in a big bucket of you're scum. And you're going to get treated as such, especially and obviously high level events around the country at the time in terms of what had happened at the Leeds Birmingham game, what had happened at Hazel, what happened every week in, week out. I think people the police just went and just expected it and then behaved as such. Yeah. So you talked a bit about the fanzine piece, and I'd love to speak to you about that, and that'll lead into the book because clearly. You've got a passion for writing. Tell me a little bit about your recollection of how it all started, but more importantly, how you got involved in it.
So prior to the fanzines, I was a prolific writer to the Pink and the Manchester Evening News, and I just found that a lot, I'd say 80% of my letters were printed.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So that encouraged me to write, and I think when a friend of mine told me about this magazine, When Saturday Comes, so it was a general national fanzine, and all of a sudden you sort of the light bulb comes on, and you're reading these articles, and you're thinking, wow, I'm not the only one. You just sort of think that you're the only one that thinks of this way, and then I went to it was Blackpool in the FA Cup, it was January 1988.
That's not the famous scrummage goal. Where there's a big... Is that the one? Have you seen the clip, haven't you?
Yes, I
It's
was right
fantastic. That was
behind
the
it.
game.
I
Right,
actually
okay.
I didn't see the goal. I saw, because literally I was at the front, and I saw, because it hit the bar and then came out. So when it
Yeah.
hit the bar and came out, I jumped up and I was like, "Oh no!" And then the next thing, I got 15 lads all over me, going mad. So
The scene
I
from
wasn't
that
on the
end
ground,
is like a
but
zoo. I mean,
yeah,
it just goes off when that goal goes in.
yeah. So that game, I bought Blueprint outside. Mike Kelly, who was
Yeah.
the founder, he was selling it, and I got home and I read that and was just like, wow! Like, again, there's not only were the like-minded people, but they were City fans as well. And I thought, I'm interested in this. I bought the first, second, and third, and I thought, yeah, this is it. Got in touch with Mike, and they invited me down to a meeting. And Frank Newton, who took the
That's
banana,
right.
the first
Yeah.
banana, he was there. Rob Dunford, who sadly passed away not so long ago, and we just started writing. And then next thing, I'm outside selling. So I gave up my pint, before the ground. You're outside in all weathers selling the fanzine. And then people like Bill Burrows came along after that, who's been a national journalist for all these years and involved in Loaded and stuff. And
Yeah.
a lot of the people that got involved with the fanzines went on to do national stuff.
100%.
We really did
Yeah.
influence it. You said like there was only the Evening News. At that time, there were there were radio phone-ins, but it was strictly about the game.
Yeah.
Fans' issues just weren't into it. All of a sudden, the fanzines came out, and then all of a sudden, radio stations, local and the Evening News, would do like the fanzine corner, and they would get the opinion of one, either United one week, City the next week, and then all of a sudden, like Talk Sport or Talk Radio, as it was, came along. All of a sudden, it was just like we're influencing. We've actually started a movement,
Yeah.
and
Well, they felt, and I'm speaking as a customer, they felt that the fanzines were their voice because otherwise they didn't have a voice, and
yeah,
you were our voice, and that was why when you read them on a coach on the way home or a train on the way home in the car, it was like this speaks to me. This is it's not just me and my five mates who go to the game. Everybody feels like this, whether it's the conditions of a football stadium, whether it's the state of the manager, whether it's the team selection, because we all had a moan back then. I know people have a go at
yeah,
Twitter and bloody, it was exactly the same back then. Everybody had an opinion. But you're right. It wasn't just football fanzines; it was music fanzines. I follow all the
yeah.
Happy Mondays in Spiral Carpets had their own fanzine. All of that back then, it gave people a sense of freedom to go, well, I can write, and just keep writing, keep writing. And you're right. Then it developed into standing room only, then fantasy football, then you've got your phone-in shows.
I mean, we sold 2,000 copies of each edition. Although
Really,
you may remember one week,
50p. Was it
sorry,
50p a go?
50p to begin with, then it was like 80p and whatever. I had to, in order to carry all this change, I had to wear this big, thick blue coat in all weather, even the sunny. I remember Bournemouth, the 3-3. It was a huge sunny day, and I've got this big, thick bubble coat on with about 400 £1 coins in my pocket, and we're scoring, and the coins are going all over the place. And I'm walking home from night games to Wally Range at Claremont Road through Alexandra Park. I'm thinking, I've got £400 on me. It wasn't only the stories in it. We communicated and we organised things. So we had the fancy dress party at Stoke. We were handing out flyers for that. They were in the magazine, but we were handing out flyers. Then there was the Blues Brothers fancy dress party, which was the final game when Palace were in the final.
That was Palace. I
Yeah,
went to that. I wasn't dressed as one of the Blues Brothers.
and
That was when there was a picture of it on social media today, where loads of City fans at the end on the pitch and in the stand wishing all the Palace fans good luck for next week.
well, before the game, there was a banner. City fans made a banner saying "Good luck next week," and they were allowed. The police let them walk around the whole of Sellers Park to a standing ovation. After the game, there was a joint pitch invasion. But everyone was lovey-dovey. People were swapping shirts. We got off the special, and I'm on Piccadilly Gardens, and I'm waiting for the train back, the bus back to Wally Range, and there was a City fan in a Palace shirt singing "We love you, Palace, we do." A lot of United fans came round the corner and gave him a hiding, and because they'd played at home somewhere.
Yeah.
And but I ended up in the Evening News just before the Palace game, because the Crystal Palace banned the fancy dress, said nobody would be allowed in with fancy dress. And the reason being is that Birmingham, the Zulus, had rioted the previous season, and they all had the faces covered, so nobody could be identified. And I ended up in the Evening News, and we were there with the Blues Brothers hat and the glasses and the City shirt, just appealing to Palace to look, this is all fun, and they relented and let us in, and it was a great day.
Okay. That's good. So fanzines, that got you into writing, I'm assuming, and I know there's a bit of a gap from the dawn of the fanzine to when you released Teenage Kicks 13 years ago, but clearly writing is still in you. Then just talk to me a little bit about the book or the idea for the book. When did you start to have the idea? Why did you start to have the idea?
And that got me the bug. And straight away then, it was like, I'm going to write a book on the youth team, because they're growing up as a teenager, age 13, 14, 15. The players are 28, 29, 30, 31. They're all into Phil Collins and Barry White and whatever. This team, this youth team, so I was 4 years older than them. They came along and they wore the same clothes as us, and they were into New Order and the Smiths and the Fall. So we could relate to them more. Of course, then they went on, and we were worshipping them on the in the first team, and I always wanted to write this book. I was always fascinated by what happened to the other seven. It was just always in the back of my head. What happened to the other seven? And I've got to write this book, and I went to a supporters club meeting at Prestwich, and Andy Hinchcliffe was there, and I got up and I just asked him, said, hey, if I write this book, would you be interested in helping me along? Yeah, no problem. And then I met Paul Lake at another meeting, and he was like, yeah, absolutely, no problem, let me know. And then I changed jobs, and with this job, I didn't really have the chance, and I got two young girls at home, so I knocked it on the head. So then fast forward 2011, and Paul Lake's book came out, and it was actually 2 days before I was due to emigrate. He was doing a book signing in town, got him to sign the book, and he said, I've still got it, to Phil 5189, best wishes, Paul Lake. I'm reading his book on the plane, and I'm sort of half in tears and half in joy, and it was just like, you've got to get it out, you've got to do this book. And when I got back, because coming to America, I married an American woman, but I couldn't work for the first 10 months because you have to go through the green card process and whatever. I thought, I've got 9-10 months here, I can write a book. And by now, of course, it was the internet. So I sort of started writing the book, and it literally was just going through season by season. And then, so it was like 14 chapters. We all know, Paul Lawren's got his chippy, and David White had his scrap metal business. So it was just a case of getting in touch with the other. I met Paul Lake. He came over after we won the trophy, the Premier League in 2012. He came over to the Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter. He came over with the trophy. Yeah. And again, I mentioned it to him then, because he remembered me asking him originally. And he gave me David Boyd's email address. David Boyd had moved to New Jersey. Actually, he wasn't far from where we were. And he gave me Steve Mills' email address. He'd moved to South Africa. So it was all sort of getting mixed. I got in touch with Ian Brightwell. He gave me Andy Hinchcliffe's email address. So it was all through that. And all I did was just sort of, I'd write the chapter, find something to write about, find a little story, and then email them and say, can you give me your take on that? Can you give me your take on that? And then just insert it.
Brilliant.
I mean, we had a great launch. The best thing about the night was, so at the final, Andy Thackeray was sent off in the first leg at Old Trafford. When, after the second game, he went up to get his tankard. It was a tankard, not a medal. He was prevented from doing so, because back then, if you were sent off in the final, you didn't get a medal.
Yeah.
That rule had since been rescinded. I contacted the FA and they said, Andy Thackeray was sent off in the Youth Cup final. Is he entitled to a medal? He said, yes. So I said, okay, well, he needs one. And they ended up saying, yes, you can have the tankard. It's £115. It was like, okay. So out of the proceeds of the book, we bought this tankard. And all the players except Andy Thackeray knew about this. And I got the Evening News to come down, and so they were there as well. And Andy on the night received his tankard, and he had absolutely no idea about it. Now, and he tells us on the night, he was given, at the time, the City gave him an inscribed watch to commemorate a win. And he just said it was a nice touch by City. And so it was a great event.
That's the youth team, and we will come to them, because I think what you were about to say earlier is that they were about to get to the semi-final against an incredibly strong Arsenal side. But meanwhile, we're also fighting on another front, albeit it's hardly the treble and it's hardly the quadruple. It's our cup competition, and we've reached the northern semi-final of the full members cup final against Hull City, the glamour of Hull City. So take us back to 1986, and what are your recollections?
I went in a minibus with the Ancoats branch to Hull. Yeah, so we'd never played, or I'd never been to Hull before. We lost 2-1, and the crowd was 5,213. And then a week later, we came back to Main Road in front of 10,180. So we'd actually got over the 10,000 mark.
Yeah.
And it was 1-0. I think it was like a last minute or 88th minute winner by, I think it was Jim Melrose, sent us to Wembley.
We won 2-0
second leg.
Second leg, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a pitch invasion after the Sunderland game when we won on penalties. So after that, I think they put the fencing up. But we beat Hull and we booked ourselves a final in March. So Chelsea played at Oxford on the Saturday. We played United at Old Trafford, and then we all travelled down to Wembley on the Sunday.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that Chelsea had to play the day before as well. Okay. And that derby game, I mean, going back to the first team, we'd had a really poor start, but actually looking at the results, we picked up because we did the double over Coventry. We actually did the double over Spurs, which is quite incredible and arguably our biggest feat of the season. Yeah. Forget Wembley finals. We did the double over West Brom. We'd beaten QPR at home. So we were pretty much okay in the league. But we'd beaten Liverpool at home on Boxing Day, which is a really vivid memory for me. I remember Clive Wilson scoring. And Clive Wilson was absolutely outstanding that season. I mean, he was
that was the highlight game
of the season. I try and weave Clive Wilson's name into every single podcast I do, even if we're doing the 1922 season, because he was my favourite ever player. So we've certainly picked up, and I actually think the full Members' Cup run probably gave us a little bit of a boost that picked up. And then we're at Old Trafford, somewhat unfairly, a lot of people would say. We're at Old Trafford on the Saturday, the day before a cup final. Obviously, you went because you went to every game. Tell us a little bit about that game, because it has gone down in folklore for a lot of reasons.
We were 2-0 down. I can't remember who pulled the goal back.
It was a Clive Wilson diving header that crawled along the ground.
Clive Wilson diving header.
Yeah.
So you got him in again.
Yeah.
And we're chasing the game. There's literally a few minutes left, and Paul Simpson was chasing down on Arthur Albiston, and he just hit it past, I think it was Gary Bailey, and it was funny because the biggest song we sang at Wembley the following day was Arthur Albiston. Oh, Arthur was just echoing around Wembley. It just put us up in. I mean, it was in front of the Stretford end, the goal, and we were in the opposite end, just going absolutely crazy, It was a great day
because the
next morning,
United was still top of the league, or near the top of the league at that stage. We weren't having the best of seasons, and we were 2-0 down. We never ever come back from stuff like that, and we did. So it was a perfect boost going into the following day.
Yeah. So the following day, I'm living in Sale at this point, and I was on a bus. It was. I mean, Donald Francis must have organised about 50 coaches, and there was one in every town. And I was on the Sale one, and we were all piled up with beer, which was illegal at the time, and we're all drinking all the way down. And I'd got rid of all I think I only took 4 cans. I jumped them.
And can I ask, Phil, how old were you at this stage?
Yeah.
How old were you in 86?
23.
Right. Okay.
23.
Right. Yeah.
And so I drank all my stuff. After the game, we all got on, and the police had gone and cleared all alcohol off on all the buses. But I was annoyed because they took my sandwiches. We got to the game, and we go 1-0 up, Steve Kinsey. We're thinking, this is great. And then the next thing is we're 5-1 down. And we just went to pieces. But then there's like 10 minutes to go. And whether it was just fatigue, obviously we'd both played 2 games in 24 hours, whether it was just Chelsea put the foot off it because they're 5-1 up, Mark Lillis scored. And then there was another one. And then there was an own goal. We all thought Lillis had got a hat-trick. David Speedy had got a hat-trick. It was 5-4, and the whistle went, and everybody was convinced that there'd been another 5 minutes, we'd have scored. Chelsea had just lost it, completely gone. It was just all City. Paul Simpson was just like playing a blinder. He was just cutting everybody up, crossing the ball. Lillis was heading in.
Yeah, because he'd come on, hadn't he? He was sub.
Yeah.
That day, yeah. Do you remember? Because Gillingham game, people left, and the Aguero goal, people left. Do you many people streaming out at 5-1? I'm assuming they did.
Yes. Oh yeah, just making their way back to the bus and stuff. Yeah.
For their own safety,
I stayed
probably
there
more than anything else.
Yeah.
So we were unsuccessful. But actually, looking at that side, we talk about the Youth Cup, and we're going to go on to talk about a famous victory in the Youth Cup. But actually, when you look at that side, Eric Nixon, youth team, Nicky Reed, youth team, Paul Power, youth team, Steve Redmond, youth team, Andy May, youth team, Steve Kinsey, youth team, Clive Wilson. So it runs all the way through City's history. I mean, that's incredible to put that out. And it's funny, you talk about some of the shit crowds that we had, 3,000, 5,000, 68,000 turned up. And I know it was on Chelsea's doorstep, but that's not to be sniffed at all. I take it the City end was packed.
Yeah, I think we were given 25,000. We took. It may be more. I don't know what the full allocation was, but yeah, clearly Chelsea were out in force. It was a bit hairy. I wasn't involved, thankfully, but I know a lot of buses got bricked and a lot of fighting between leaving the stadium, getting to the buses. It was a bit of a hairy. There's all rumours that Millwall were coming up and joining. All this sort of rumours that you always get when we play in London. That all London's coming out, because I think it's a game where everybody could get tickets. Basically, if you wanted a ticket, you could go.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity. It was a Sunday. Anybody that wanted to go up for a fight, it was a free for all.
Yeah, and people didn't need any introduction back then for a bit of a scrap anyway.
No.
So, I mean, we've started to pick up in the league. We've got to the final. We give a decent account of ourselves in the end. But back to the youth team. So this youth team, with some really top quality talent in there, we actually find ourselves semi-final stage, and it's looking pretty good for us. Do you want to pick it up from there?
Yes, Arsenal was a tough game again because it was the unknown, but also they were the dominant youth team based down there. So we went to Highbury. It's funny, I've not mentioned this. Where all the home games at City. Do you remember these from the reserve games? These team sheets.
Yeah, used to get handed out.
So, and because they had a voucher, they all had the little voucher in the corner. If we got to Wembley. So, but when we got to Arsenal, they produced this nice little 4-page programme. So we went to Highbury and we lost 1-0. A very strong team. They had Paul Merson up front.
Yeah.
They had Michael Thomas, who 3 years later scored that winning goal at Anfield in the final minute to win Arsenal the title. And so we lost 1-0. It was a very, very, very tough game. I think Tony Buck saw that as, it could have been a lot worse, and 1-0 was achievable. So then the turn came to Main Road, and Paul Molden put us 1-0 up. There was 5,500. It was the main stand only, and it was packed. There were people having to stand up, in the main stand. And Paul Molden put us 1-0 up. And then it was about 25 minutes to go, Arsenal equalised. They would say they were a very, very strong side. And we thought, this is it. We're not going to do it. We're going to, and it was the pressure on the players was twofold. One is obviously we wanted to reach the final, but we also knew that United were the opponents. So there was this extra pressure on them that we've got to be in the final because it's United. And we all thought we're not going to do it. And then Tony Buck, Glenn Pardew pulled a masterstroke because Arsenal were very solid in the back. They took off Andy Thackeray in midfield, put Steve McCauley on, who I'd never seen before. That was his first game in the youth team, 16-year-old. I thought he looked about 14. And I told him that when I messaged him. I said,
what a risk, we were throwing him in.
Yeah, we were all really worried because who's this kid? Yeah, we all thought it was a school kid. And he was brilliant. He was absolutely solid as a rock. He pushed Ian Brightwell up front. So he sort of took a midfield player out and just sort of pushed Ian Brightwell up. And he was doing these surging runs, and it completely threw Arsenal because it was man for man. You're on him, you're on him, you're on him. And all of a sudden, there was this extra forward up. And Ian Brightwell just caused chaos in their penalty area. Ball come loose, Paul Molden, back of the net, 2-1. So it went to extra time. And it was still 2-2 after extra time. It went to penalties. And it was very tense. I mean, by now, it was like 9:45, Arsenal went first and scored. Arsenal went 2-1. Paul Lake made it 2-2, 3-2 to Arsenal, Andy Inchcliffe 3-3, and then Paul Merson came up and Steve Crompton saved it. Brilliant save.
Paul Merson missed a penalty.
Referee said he moved. Yeah, the crowd went mad. the referee said that Steve Crompton had moved before the ball was touched. Retake, it was 4-3. Steve Redmond came up 4-4. Sorry, they missed their fourth, a Chris Waddle job. So it came down to Ian Scott. It was this long walk from the halfway line to the centre spot. And he's knowing that this kick is going to get us in the final, and he scored. Players went mad, and we'd got to the final against United. Now, here's the thing. This was on Tuesday, the 27th of April. The final was in 48 hours' time. United had a 10-day break. Yeah, United had been Coventry in their semi-final.
Why had we played ours late?
Don't know.
Okay.
But United players had a 10-day rest. So City had extra time and penalties, and we're at Old Trafford. The main stand was open for United. We had behind the goal 7,000 there, and I'd say easily split 50-50. United thought they would have the advantage and that the City would be tired. Actually, as the game went on, we were the more stronger. United took the lead early in the second half. But the two outstanding players for City was Paul Molden. For United, it was Gary Walsh, their goalkeeper.
Yeah.
United really only had two players that made it. Gary Walsh with United, and Bradford, Middlesbrough, Wigan, and Lee Martin, who scored the winning goal in the cup replay.
1990, yeah.
But it was like Paul Molden versus Gary Walsh. And whatever Paul Molden threw at them, Gary Walsh equalled. So United went 1-0 up in front of the Stretford end early in the second half. Then two players, Aidan Murphy and Andy Thackeray, as already mentioned. Aidan Murphy, he did a bad foul on Andy Thackeray, who reacted badly, and it was handbags, and both players were sent off, which was a bit harsh. I mean, no fists drawn, it was just handbags. So we're all down to 10 men, and I think the bigger space, or the open more space, suited City more. And there was about 10 minutes to go. The ball crossed into the area. United player handled it. Penalty right in front of us. Paul Lake went to take it. And again, this is where I just didn't think Lakey would score.
Didn't fancy it.
But that wasn't to do with Lakey. It was to do with Gary Walsh. I just thought, this man is on form. He's going to save it. And he did save it. Fortunately, he parried it, and Lakey ran up and slotted the rebound in, and we all went crazy. So it was 1-1, and now we've got 5 days. So this was a Thursday. The second leg was on the Monday night.
Yeah.
Steve Redmond played for the first team on the Saturday. Steve Redmond, I wrote it down in the book, and I meant to look it up last night, and I didn't. He played something like 12 games in something like 30 games. He was playing for the youth team. He was playing for the first team. Extra time, penalties, all this sort of stuff. And when I mentioned that to him, he just said, because he played 57 games that season, all reserves, youth team, England, including, I think it was like 62 games with England and the first team. And he said, did I? I said, yeah. And he said, I would never have known. He said, I was 18. I was just having the best time of my life. Yeah. And so it came to the final. The Kipax was going to be open. The main stand was going to be open, and the United fans would have Platt Lane and the Kipax open away fans corner. The game starts, and clearly the main stand that by now is too full. And just as the game starts, fans are being led around the field. They're coming out of the main stand, around the track in front of the pitch, into the north stand, and the north stand's filling. So I'm watching, the game's literally just started, and I'm watching the fans more than, I'm on the Kipax, watching the fans more than the team. And I just happened to see Paul Molden, near to where the fans were, cross over, and David Boyd, a stooping header, back of the net. Again, Gary Walsh. I mean, we joke about the 6-1, it should have been 10. Over the two legs, it should have been 10. Gary Walsh was just the difference. And it was 4 minutes to go. I mean, this was the worry that United had a couple of chances. Steve Crompton pulled off a couple of really good saves late on. Had all these chances, but we were kept letting United back in by not scoring them. And of course, I only needed one to take it to extra time. But it was 4 minutes to go, and Paul Molden put the game beyond doubt. If the official crowd was 18,000,
nowhere near.
There was more than that.
I was in the main stand. I was in the main stand that night, and it was absolutely. It was Swale's mathematical magic again. Absolutely.
So, and I estimated there was 2,000 United between the Platt Lane and the Kipax.
Yeah.
And when it came to the book launch, and Bernard Alford was there, somebody asked the question, Bernard, what was the real crowd? And he said 28,000. Yeah. Now,
Shocking.
City played the weekend before that game, and we had 18,000 there. The next home game actually was Arsenal, and I think there was 19,000 there. I mean, for me, that was the first trophy I saw City win. So anybody, my generation, that would have been the first thing we saw. This team captured the imagination of City fans, you know, and that is why they got a special place in our heart.
So, I mean, that is, you know, for a season that on the surface actually doesn't stand out as one of the most pivotal. When you think about it, we had a Wembley final, and then these players that were bloodied through on the back of some real success, because the better team was the year before, as you've said, and then they won it against some really strong opposition. I mean, that Arsenal side and United, a derby isn't easy. Just looking back on that season, and particularly the Youth Cup side, what legacy do you think that season and that group of players left City, both at that time and then in the immediate future, 4 or 5 seasons after?
I think it gave us this hope that we could see that these players were coming through. I mean, Peter Swales was in the Evening News the next day saying, you know, this is our future. We all thought, yeah, this is it. And if you look at the back of it, Billy McNeill let Paul Power go to Everton on the basis that Andy Hinchcliffe was going to play. So he let Paul Power go. He went on and won the league with Everton.
He scored against us. Do you remember when he scored against us? He looked absolutely crestfallen.
Yeah. But the first game of the season, the following season, was Wimbledon, and Ian Brightwell was bang. He was that was his debut. So by now we had Steve Redmond and Ian Brightwell. The one funny thing, towards the end of the season, fans were asking Billy McNeill to play the youth, and he wanted to hold them back. And we were a lot of us were critical about McNeill not trusting the youth. When it came to the following season, McNeill left after 7 games, I think it was, and Jimmy Frizzell came over, and straight away David White was in the team. And Paul Lake, I think, around the February, that was Wimbledon away. So Frizzell was bringing the youth team through. The following season, 88, was Ian Scott and Andy Hinchcliffe made their debut in the first. Yeah. So 15 months after Youth Cup win, 7 were playing in the first team. And it was April the 1st, 1989, against Brighton. All 7 started one game where we lost, and Paul Cooper saved a penalty. But then again, he had to be retaken. But
he saved a penalty every week that season. We actually lost 2-1. Some of them all he scored. Brightwell, Hinchcliffe, Lake, Redmond, White, Malden. Bloody hell, yeah. And for good measure, Phil, can you tell me which other youth product came on as well that day? Not from the same generation. Generation after.
Was it
generation after?
Jason Beckford?
No, I reckon he probably played in the same youth team as it.
Hang on, Taggart.
Correct, Jerry Taggart came on. That's right. I think you're right. I think that legacy was that, you know, you look at that 85-86 season, they were nowhere to be seen in the first team other than Steve Redmond. You look at the next season, you've got Steve Redmond making 40-odd appearances, David White making 30 appearances, Paul Malden making 24 appearances, Brightwell making 20 appearances. So clearly, and also born out of necessity as well, because there's no money, because we're absolutely broke. And I mean, further down the line, it came in handy because those players carried us into the first division, and we're still there under Howard Kendall, and we're still there under Peter Reid, weren't they?
Yes, yeah. It was sort of like one by one would leave. Andy Hinchcliffe, Paul Malden, as soon as we got promoted. I mean, again, there was this thing about, you know, Mel Machin saying he was too small,
rumours,
didn't have his pace and all this sort of stuff. I mean, he was our top goal scorer in the promotion season. He went to Bournemouth, and then Howard Kendall came in, swapped Andy Hinchcliffe for Neil Poynton. So Redmond it was sort of. I remember
Redmond ended up going, didn't he? Redmond ended up going.
He went to Oldham.
He went to Oldham as well.
Neil Poynton and Redmond for Rick Oldham. Yeah.
I mean, that's bleak, isn't it? Really. Brightwell stayed around for a long time.
David White was swapped for Rocky Rocastle,
who at the time only had one leg, and we still swapped him. Although David White had probably come to his time at City, and Lake, we know what happened with him, because unfortunately he got that injury, and he was the best of the lot, without a shadow of a doubt.
I mean, the thing is, when we talk about the legacy of that team, Between them, they made 1,397 first team appearances.
I'd have never got anywhere near that, Phil. I'd have said they
Yeah.
probably made about 500 between them, 600.
Yeah. Well, Ian Brightwell was 382.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's, and that was between 7 of them. So that's the legacy.
And finally, because I forgot to mention it before, Tony Buck and Glenn Pardo. I mean, I'm sure the players are indebted to those two. Two very different styles, I believe. What did you glean about those two from doing your book?
Total dedication to the cause. I mean, you take Tony Buck, he's won everything as a player. He won the League Cup as a manager, and then sort of sacked, and then brought back, and then in the youth. And people may think, why did he do it? But he did it for the love of the club. But he genuinely believed in these players. He was very, very hard on these players, as the players will say, or they did in the book. Again, you compare today's youth team players. These players were doing the training in the morning. Then they were collecting all the first team players' kit, taking it up to the washroom, waiting for it to be washed, bringing it back down, folding it neatly for the players the next day. They were scrubbing the floors, scrubbing the showers. And this was all on £26 YTS, youth training scheme, for those that don't know what YTS was. Whereas today's players are on however much they're on, they don't clean players' boots, the first team boots, they don't clean showers, drive up in their nice little car. Ian Brightwell tells a story of him traveling on the train from Congleton every day with his bike and then cycling to Platt Lane on his bike. That's how it was. Tony Buck molded these players, and he was very, very hard on them. They would say they would clean the place up, and Steve Redmond would have to go up and say, "We've done it, Skip." He'd say, "Right, be down in a minute," and he'd leave them there for an hour. He would come down and go, "Bit of dirt, start again." They would be cursing him and cursing. But Glyn would come in, arm around the shoulder, explain why he was doing this. So it was this good cop, bad cop thing. Yeah. Chris Coleman was on City's books the following season, played in the Youth Cup, a couple of reserves, but he just found it very, very tough. He was away from home, from South Wales, and he just found Skip, Tony Buck, just too strong, just too authoritarian, and he went back home. He just couldn't take it anymore. And Paul Lake says that. He says it made some players, it broke some players. What they all said is, although they didn't appreciate at the time, they all got it now. And those of them that are still coaching today have Tony Buck's ethos. And what they said as well is, it wasn't just about playing with Tony. It was, this is how you behave in life. Yeah. This is how you do things as an individual, Yeah. And they said he taught them life skills as well as game skills, And that came across in the book, that the love for the pair of them. Sadly, both of them are no longer with us, But they were the major force, driving force. They believed in those boys, and they got what they got it back tenfold. Yeah.
Well, Phil, I've absolutely loved the last hour, so thank you very much. I hope in the 40th anniversary of that wonderful side that City can bring it home again. A couple of days' time, actually. It's in about a week's time, isn't it? I hope they bring it home. It would be great, and hopefully you get the opportunity to showcase what a brilliant book that you wrote as well. But from me and from all of our listeners, thank you so much for your time.
The one good thing about next week's game is, I can watch it in America. I can maybe to watch it. The biggest disappointment of the 86 aim is that it wasn't filmed. You'd think even if Granada didn't want to do it, City could have just got a camera up there. There is no footage whatsoever, and that's the biggest disappointment.
Which is bizarre. Well, hopefully we'll be able to put a few past the other lot next week.
Definitely.
But
thanks for having me.
But no, thank you very much, Phil, and I would love to have you on again at some time in the future.
Great.
Cheers. Thank you very much.